Hello everybody, this is Conquering History Games, and welcome back to another Kaiserreich guide for Hearts of Iron 4. Today is a brand new guide that was not chosen by the patrons. This is actually one that I personally wanted to do, and I'm hoping, I'm cutting it a little bit close right now, but I'm hoping that I'm going to get this guide out around the time when my Australian viewers are probably going to be coming back from the dawn services for ANZAC Day, because it is ANZAC Day today, and so I know I do have some Australian viewers, and so I thought I would cover the Australasian Confederation to commemorate the occasion, and thank you to all Australians who served whenever and wherever. Anyway, let's just jump into it. Incidentally, I'm going to throw a couple links in the description below if anybody wants to learn about exactly what ANZAC Day is. So anyway, the Australasian Confederation. Wow, let me just say, thank you, Kaiserreich team. This is a simply amazing country. So complex, so interesting, so amazing, just fantastic stuff. There's so much that I'm going to cover here today, and yet there's so much I'm not going to cover because I just don't have the time. I don't have enough time to get all my notes down, any more notes down. But I do promise you, anybody who is watching this, that before this video is done, you will know at least one way to turn totalist, syndicalist, radical socialist, social democratic, market liberal, social conservative, authoritarian democratic, paternal autocratic, and national populist. At least one way for each of those. So kind of like Russia, social liberals are getting the short end of the stick. Anyway, let's read the brief history now. Because I don't know, I guess you could just look at the time now, but I'm pretty sure this is going to become my longest guide ever. Even longer than my German Empire one, which was almost an hour. I'm not going to be surprised if this crosses the 1 hour mark, but let's not waste time. Let's just jump into it. Nearly 2 decades after the Weltkrieg, Australasia still hasn't healed. Unbelievable, catastrophic manpower losses and sacrifices in the Weltkrieg, all for naught, have led to an atmosphere of cynicism and hopelessness as the once great British Empire crumbled to pieces. The economy is a complete dumpster fire, a natural consequence of the fall of the United Kingdom and the ensuing loss of exports that followed. The shadow of the syndicalist Melbourne Commune still haunts the continent, but there are still plenty who haven't forgotten the empire and are ready to reclaim its birthright. Okay, so we're just going to jump into this here. Of course, this is a guide, not a playthrough. You're going to be seeing a lot of console commands, a lot of save files, and things like that. Don't get upset about it. But yes, thanks again to the Kaiserreich team. So you are the Australasian Confederation. You are essentially something that was unified. It's a unification of New Zealand and Australia as part of this resource Consolidation Act, or whatever the heck it was called, in the 1920s by the British Empire. You are a member of the Entente, so you're still subservient or partnered, depending on how you want to look at it, with the royal family up here in Canada, and of course the Dominion of India, the French Republic, the Caribbean Federation, and the newest member of the Entente, Sardinia. Don't depend on them for much help. But you have so many different paths that you can take as Australia. So I'm not going to be talking about these political paths until the end of the video, because that's going to be taking up most of the video. So, research slots. You've got 3, pretty standard. Civilian factories. You have 15, 7 of which are being consumed by consumer goods. You can, I guess, get more from trade, but you have very little resources, as you can see here. Just a bit of steel, a bit of chromium, a bit of tungsten. Really, not too much. People definitely aren't going to be coming to you for help very often. Military factories, you've only got 4, although the game does start you with several other military equipment lines queued up. I don't know if you're going to want to change these or not. That's totally up to you. But keep in mind that your infantry equipment and artillery does already start with maxed out production efficiency cap. You've also only got 5 naval dockyards. Speaking of research and your Navy, you've only got access to the 1922 level technology, so you don't have any 1936 level stuff, although you do at least start with carriers, and you have the ability to use transport ships, so that's kind of nice, I suppose. The naval stuff I'll talk about later some more. You also mercifully at least have Infantry Equipment 1 available to you, but that's it on this string. You also have engineers and recon companies available here, as well as the Great War Tank, so you can start going this way or that way if you so choose. Only basic artillery over here. No land doctrines have been pre-researched. You have all of the 1936 level fighters, or things on the fighter line, so that's nice, I suppose. No air doctrines pre-researched, no industry pre-researched, no engineering pre-researched. Let's take a look at your national spirits now. A lot of interesting stuff going on here. You have an oversized fleet, which is lowering your field coordination, which is, as far as I know, the only thing in... it's the only time I've ever heard of there being a fleet coordination negative effect created by a national spirit or a focus or something like that in Hearts of Iron 4, be it a vanilla or otherwise. Let me know in the comments if it's somewhere else, but I think that's pretty unique. Less dockyard output and more consumer good factories. The reasons for this is that in the chaotic aftermath of Britain's downfall, many ships fled to Australasia to find refuge. This arrangement has become permanent, with the economy now in depression. Affording it has become difficult. A solution must be found at once. And so, of course, that's going to be one of your branches. You've also got an economic depression, which is terrible. It already talked about in the brief history why it's so bad, but it's giving you extra daily political power costs, less factory output, less construction, less production efficiency cap, less resources to market, and you already don't have very many resources to send to market anyway, and less stability. So it's like you're already in a disaster before you're even in a disaster. You've also been bled dry. Pretty bad proportional casualties for Australia and New Zealand during World War I. We gave everything we had in the Weltkrieg and then some, and it shows. Nearly everybody knew someone who died far from home for a war that meant nothing in the end, and have no desire to see such a thing happen again, not unless it's absolutely necessary. So this is lowering your recruitable population factor and your war support, but also your surrender limit itself has gone down. So that's something you want to watch out if you get invaded. Alright, you also have the ANZAC spirit, so this is a little bit interesting. That curious mixture of toughness and sentimentality is giving your army more attack, defense, and recovery rate, although you're going to have a little bit of less organization. This could be modified later. And you've got reduced legation cities dividends, as I'm sure a lot of you already know. The legation cities appear in China. They give bonuses to certain countries. They get a little bit more factory output and less consumer good factories. You're just getting a reduced proportion of that. So it's not much, but hey, no, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? Okay, so as far as your... Whoops, I did not actually mean to deselect that. So you've got 12 divisions. Whoops, wrong button. Okay, you've got 12 divisions available to you. Some of them are down here in New Zealand at the start. A lot of cavalry, and you have two types of infantry divisions. One is this 18 width they always like to start you with, and another is the one with the support artillery. The one with the support artillery actually only makes up 3 of your divisions, as you will see here. So it's not very much. But you've got some really excellent generals, and incidentally, I wish I had time to talk about all of these Australians that the Australian Confederation have. Some super interesting guys here, but I'm just going to highlight like a few, like 3 or 4 as we go through the whole guide. And you're going to lose some of them, some of your generals, or at least one of your generals, and at least one of your field marshals, depending on which paths you go down. But as I was saying, you got some really interesting effects here. You have a harsh leader who's a desert fox. You've got a hill fighter, reconnaissance. John here is pretty interesting because he actually starts with the artillery officer trait. So your artillery specialist experience factor is plus 100%. So if you want the big bad king of battle guns, that could be fun. You've got a general down here who's charismatic, so that's cool. Although he is old guard, a lot of old guard here. You got your panzer leader. And then as far as your field marshals go, you've only got 2, and you could lose one of them. Thomas Blaney here, he starts out pretty good, although he does have a couple of useless ones here because he's politically connected and he's a war hero. So that doesn't matter because you can't promote him anyway. But he is also a thorough planner and an organizer. So if you're somebody who likes grand battle plan, that might be the guy for you. Okay, so that basically sums up your military. You've only got 130 manpower here at the start that you can actually call into the army afterwards. Because remember, you've been bled dry, and you don't have a whole lot of population anyway. Okay, your Navy. Your Navy is pretty bad. You have a submarine fleet here, just pretty standard stuff. Then your capital fleet itself, you actually have a pre-Weltkrieg carrier here. Very unusual piece of equipment. I forgot about all those aircraft carriers that were created before World War I. But a lot of your stuff, like your light cruisers, they're pre-Weltkrieg, so nothing too spectacular going on right there. But you are going to be able to upgrade them later, or you can just scrap it for parts, whatever you want to do. Okay. Let's now talk about your actual focus tree here. So let's start with the Air Force, because the Air Force is relatively simple. It's just your basic stuff, getting bonuses for research doctrines. You know, choose, do you want bombers or do you want fighters? The aviation industry is kind of cool because you're just going to get reduced production costs on basically everything. Not everything, but actually, is there anything that's not? No, yeah, it is actually on everything. What am I thinking? Yeah, so it's just all pretty standard stuff. Now, you do have the Women's Auxiliary, which is going to let women become pilots. The Air Observer Corps is going to give you some anti-air, so this could be good if you want to do a defensive thing. Keep in mind, though, that whether you want to play defensive or not, you need to take Air Observer Corps before you can expand the aviation industry, which is going to reduce your production cost even more. So you have aviation industry up here, and then it's going to stack here, and you also get to build air bases faster, and then finally rule the southern skies. But besides that, nothing too fancy going on there, and it really doesn't have to be. I think these are great kind of air trees, just simple like that. Then you have your naval stuff down here. So now let's start popping in them console commands. Not the first time, and it's not going to be the last. So all of this is pretty standard things here, where you can just, get naval bases, naval dockyards, and things like that. But note, you can't take overall the RAN because you still have the National Spirit oversized fleet. This gets rid of your National Spirit oversized fleet, but to get rid of that, you have to first get rid of your economic depression that you're suffering from. That's this one, the empty safe. That is over here in this branch of the tree. And incidentally, once you do this, you basically have two directions to go in. You can either scrap the reserves, and you're going defensive here, you're getting coastal forts, or you can upgrade the reserves, which is going to lower your dockyard output by 75% for a year and increase your consumer good factories by 10%, which could be a good or a bad thing, because there are certainly some situations in the game where you have consumer good factories eating up all of your factories, so you could just upgrade your reserves, and then there's virtually no consequences. But after about 6 months, your outdated equipment will be upgraded to the better stuff, basically. So that's a pretty good way to get a decent navy. Of course, not as large as Japan's, but it's something. And then you get down here, you're getting more Marines, more transport models, things like that. And then either way, you can get the Australian Shipbuilding Board, which is also lowering production cost. And you get more dockyards, so that's pretty cool. Now, as I was saying, you can't overhaul the RAN until you have fixed your economic depression. So the state of the economy can be taken at any time. It only takes 70 days. Then you've got these 3 paths to take. Now, as far as I can tell, there's actually no political ideology that you can have that is going to stop you from taking any of these 3. But keep in mind what supports what. So liberalizing the economy is going to help the market liberals. Privatizing the failing public sector is going to increase the popularity of the social conservatives, and reforming the bureaucracy is going to change the popularity of the social democrats in a good way. And there are, of course, some slight changes from each one. All of these are going to take you to recovering from the depression, which is going to decrease the amount of daily political power costs that you're suffering, increase your production efficiency cap, increase your factory output. You're going to get, it's basically going to cut everything in half. Stability, construction speed, resources, all of these negative effects that you're suffering from will be virtually cut in half, a little bit more than half, as far as the daily political power cost is concerned. Whoa, pardon me. The other difference between them, though, is you're going to get a different national spirit for half a year. So, for example, the reforming of the bureaucracy is going to give you more stability and daily political power gain. This is going to give you more production efficiency cap, factory output, and construction speed, and liberalizing the economy is going to lower your consumer good factories and give you a tiny bit more resources to market. But besides that, it ultimately doesn't matter unless that you actually are one of these parties and you want to boost it, because you're going to lose the bonus after half a year anyway. After that, you've got a few things that aren't amazing, but it's something: infrastructure, building slots, and wealth of the antipodes, which is going to give you more resources. Significantly more steel, for example. And you get aluminum, so that's good for planes. After that, you can trade with the Commonwealth or begin to seek out new markets. So this is kind of a little bit political here. You can't trade with the Commonwealth if you are paternal autocrats, or basically, if you are not in the Entente, you can't trade with the Commonwealth. The way that this works is, for anybody who's ever played as Ireland, you will send out a series of trade missions to other nations. So, for example, the Entente, you're going to send it to Canada, and you're going to send it to France, things like that. And if they accept, you get 25 political power and a bit of stability. If you are rejected, and this applies for both the seeking the new markets sends it to like South Africa and Japan and stuff. But if you are rejected, you will lose 25 political power. But remember that just taking either one gives you 100 political power. So I suppose if you get rejected by everybody, you'll still kind of break even. And you're also getting down here towards the ending of the Depression. So that's all it takes. Once you've done that, you get a few more things. They're just going to give you some more military factories, getting our men back to work. In fact, I shouldn't say just, because, for example, the Australian armaments is going to give you 4, and this is going to give you 4. Remember, you only start with 4. So it's actually pretty strong if you want to focus on your industry early. And after the 1936 election, you are going to find yourself with a lot of time to kill until 1939, especially depending on which branch you've taken. You're waiting for wars, you're trying to prepare for wars, things like that. You've got a lot of time to get all of these knocked out. So I'm actually... Wait, yeah. So the Get Men Back at Work is connected over here to the oil exploration, which is going to give you some oil in Queensland. But this also leads over here to the Australian Research Council. So this is how you get extra research slots, because, of course, you only start with 3. Just going down here, after you take the first one, you either have the option to join the ISAC or expand the council. But, of course, you see the option is not actually there, because the Dominion of Canada has not formed the ISAC. So this is similar to how the Dominion of India cannot take the, what is it? Yeah, here we go. They join the ISAC, which will eventually lead to another research slot for them, until they have, until Canada itself has taken the ISAC focus, which is, oh goodness, it's been a while since I looked at this tree. Where was it? You know what? It doesn't matter, because they're usually going to do it in, like, 1938. Oh, that is annoying me. That's really annoying me. Here it is, yeah, create the ISAC. So I guess, like, in theory, it could be done in the first year. But don't worry, if they are taking too long to do it, let's say that you've decided to stay in the Entente, because obviously if you're not in the Entente, if you join the Third International or something, you're not going to have this option available to you. You can just expand the council. See, one of the following must be true. You're not in a faction with the Dominion of Canada, or it is after the 1st of January, well, 1 a.m. on the 1st of January in 1938. So if the Canadian AI, for some reason, is just taking way too long, you get to expand the council instead, which is not going to give you political power, but it is going to give you more production efficiency cap and less research time. This will lead down to the National University, which is going to increase those abilities. And you can do this even if you take the ISAC, so that's going to be down here. Focusing on computers is going to help with you getting computing machines, the encryption, decryption, stuff like that. Focus on radar, pretty self-explanatory. And then you get your 4th research slot down here, increased research funding. As soon as you're done with that, you in theory could take new mines in Australia, but the problem is you can't have your economic depression and you have to have more than 35 factories. So essentially, if you want to pull that off, you're going to have to complete this entire tree, more or less, so that you can get the new mines in Australia, because let's see, you're starting with 24, this is going to give you 4, 4, that gets you up to 32, you can probably build a couple here and there, you can industrialize the south. Essentially, you have to complete this before you can take new mines in Australasia. And then you'll finally have your 5 research slots. Radium Hill uranium is kind of cool. The Radium Hill uranium mines gives us an advantage in the nuclear arms race that few other countries possess. So you're going to get some nuclear technology bonus here. 2 rocketry technology bonuses, and I already talked about the oil exploration. All right. Back over here, to the right, State of the Army. Again, pretty simple stuff. The clarifying of the ANZAC, though, is interesting. Remember how I was talking earlier about how you can modify the ANZAC spirit? This is something that is going to give you a land doctrine research time bonus, but also you can then modify the spirit. So be sure you're tracking what this actually means, because it's saying modify ANZAC spirit. So, for example, this is going to modify the recovery rate, but increase the organization. So right now you're at -2%, so that should put you at +5% division organization, and you're going to get another 20% max planning. So again, if you're somebody who likes Grand Battle Plan, I know I do, that's a pretty cool one to have, but you have different things available to you here. So for example, you can have less division training time and more reinforce rate. That's probably for the mass assault people. Quality weapons, hint hint, superior firepower, and then the ANZAC are fine with tried and true methods, which is just going to increase your recovery rate by an additional 10%. So there you go. You see everything's the same, but even though it was 10% before, 10 plus 10 is 20. So that was just an example. I'm not saying that's the best path. These are just your standard research bonuses over here. Now you've got some options to take here. First off, you have the enacting of the Anderson Doctrine. You cannot take this if you have become paternal autocrat. The paternal autocrats, which we're going to talk about later, are a very defensively minded political ideology in Australia in the game. So they're about focusing on defense, for example, which you could do as anybody, but this is the path you would have to go. So this is where you're getting more land forts, coastal forts, things like that. But the enacting of the Anderson Doctrine is something that you can take with any of the other ideologies, including the democratic ones, where you can then get demands on various areas around you. So essentially, like some of these areas in Timor and going after Socialists and things like that. Now, then you've got to focus on mobility over here, or a focus on quality. So one of the things I think is kind of cool about quality, actually, no, pardon me, these are the only mutually exclusive parts. After that, these two are mutually exclusive. It's not an actual line, but the mobility is going to give you a reduced ahead of time penalty for the RP3 high explosive general purpose and motorized. So that's right here. So you can get some motorized rocket artillery pretty quick, so that's nice. Then you can do a focus on quality, which is just going to help your artillery and infantry equipment more. Again, you don't see something that's a little different from most army focus trees is you're not seeing where, okay, this is your mass assault branch, this is your mobile branch, where it spells that out for you. It's more that you get bonuses and you can infer, all right, what do I want to do? Do I want to have mass assault but maybe have a little bit better infantry equipment than I normally would have under mass assault? Or do I want to go superior firepower all the way and have like artillery 3 in 1940 or something like that? Don't quote me on that time. I was just giving you the example. But this leads to supported tech stuff. Z Special Unit is cool because you just automatically get logistical companies. I think this is just a reference to the tour book Rats down here. More land doctrine bonuses. You get mountaineers here. So if you're going to be coming down here relatively soon and you want mountaineers, you probably don't want to actually research them. Just take this. Then you can do a focus on urban combat. So again, really unique focus here. You're getting extra attack, defense, and movement in urban areas, which is usually something that's not available to you until you get engineering. Until you research engineering 3 here. So you see additional attack and defense in urban areas. Or you can focus on jungle combat, which gives you the same bonuses just for jungle areas. And there are a fair amount of jungles out here, for example. Wait, no. Where's the jungles? There we go. Yeah, jungles. In your section of New Guinea, for example. But also in other areas, out here in Southeast Asia, there's no shortage of jungle, that is for sure. All right, let's see. We went over that. Okay, so here we go. Now you can also choose to begin the conscription plebiscite, or you can choose to skip it. You can only choose to skip it if this has failed already, or you do not have an elected government, or you're at war with a major power. So usually you're not going to be able to take it this early. Well, depending on what you've done, really. But I don't have an elected government, but I've been doing console commands, so that's why it's available to me right now, but it won't always be. The way this works is you basically ask Australia and New Zealand, you ask everybody in here, are you okay with us instituting a draft? Because you can't change your conscription law. You see, if I was to hover over this, for example, even though I have 100 political power, and even at peace you can switch to limited conscription usually, it'll say, no, you cannot enact conscription laws. So you have to ask the people to do it for you. So we're going to wait for that to happen. But basically, yeah, here we go. The conscription plebiscite begins. The government has been preparing for the plebiscite for several weeks, and already the issue has swept across the Australasian Confederation. It is a controversial topic and one that will be voted on a state-by-state basis. If more states approve it than don't, then the conscription law will be immediately enacted. If it fails, however, it will be an embarrassment for the government, and the conscription will be even more difficult to pass in the future. The full results should be within a month or so. So that's a lot of the Australian game. The Australasian game is just sort of sitting around and waiting for things to happen. But there's always something new to research. Of course, King George is dying. You got some brush fires. Incidentally, I'm not going to go over every single freaking event that you can get, but you're going to be getting throughout the game constant events that are lowering your stability, increasing the popularity of other parties, things like that. Okay, so New South Wales has voted yes. Northern Territory has voted no. Okay, and also while we're waiting, you're seeing this is the Entente little conference that always happens at the start of Entente games now. I don't ever see any reason to not just agree to everything that the rest of the Entente wants, even if you're going to say go syndicalist later, because you're just getting free political power. That's the way I look at it. It's just free political power from attending that conference. Okay, so South Australia is voting no. Conference is over. All right, so we're moving. Queensland's voting yes. Let's see what happens, and let's see if they vote yes or no. If they vote yes, I'll show you guys what a no looks like, because a no can be a bit of a harsh penalty. And it's wow, New Zealand actually voted yes. That's really, really rare, because most events regarding New Zealand, as you'll see, sometimes they have a little bit of a problem joining. So right here, conscription, plebiscite results, no, you're going to lose 200 political power, and then whatever party you are is going to lose that 5%. So right now I'm an authoritarian Democrat, which usually is not going to last past the election. In fact, it's impossible to last past the election, but you lose 200 political power because of that. So let's say you just want to do it anyway. You can then skip it. Even though it failed, conscription is still necessary whether the people like it or not. Our government will simply have to bear the consequences, which is going to cost you 30% of your stability. And remember, stability is extra important here because of the stability system that Kaiserreich has had. It's been slightly modified. But now, if you wanted, it actually goes on its own to a limited conscription. So kind of a harsh penalty. But really, when you think about it, you just pay 200 political power, which really is actually double it. So if you do this, though, you're going to usually get this, the conscription riots in New Zealand, which are going to lower your base stability, and they are no longer a core. Later on, I'm going to talk about the various ways that Australasia can actually break away from Australia, and these conscription riots are an example of how there is some deep-rooted issues between them being lumped together here. Although I'll say in advance, New Zealand can break off. It does not have its own focus tree yet. I don't know what the plans are for there to be one. I would not imagine that it is a super high priority at all. Okay, so let's now start going into the save files. As you're going to see, I've got quite a few of them. There's a lot of stuff here to talk about. Let's first go to the 1936 elections. The 1936 elections are always going to happen in March. There's a lot of reasons why they're happening. We're not going to go into it. This and the 1939 elections are basically the most important, relatively early game things that are going to happen for you. In these 1936 elections, you're only going to have three options. You can either have Earl Page win, so that would be the market liberals. John Curtin could win, and the Social Democrats can seize control. Or you can have Stanley Bruce and the United Australasians take control with the Social Conservatives. So basically, it's the people kind of in the middle. Again, poor social liberals getting skipped over all the time. Poor John Gardner in the United States. So the difference here, though, of course, they'll all get 20% more popular, is that you're going to lose some stability depending on who wins. So, for example, let's say you chose Earl Page in the Country Party. Let's give it some time. Now, no matter what happens, the Australasian Guard is going to get upset about this. That is the National Populist Party, also called the Centre Party. Ironic, because they're on the far right. It's going to lower your stability. Lots of lowered stability, lots of lowered popularity. Just learn to live with it. Now, after you've elected a Democratic head of the government, as you'll see, William Birdwood is actually still in charge. And so you'll get this event. A new Governor General, William Birdwood's temper as Governor General saw a vast expansion in powers available to the position, which he used to maintain order in Oceania at the expense of democracy and civil liberties. Birdwood, a British general from the Weltkrieg, was imposed upon Australasia by an empire fearful of revolt, but times have changed, and the newly elected government could use this opportunity to replace him with a native Australian. While this move would be popular with many, others have suggested that an opportunity exists to invite a member of the royal family to assume the role and thus put Australasia more firmly within the sphere of the empire and our fellow Entente allies. Alright, so you can have him stay, which is going to lower your stability, or you could bring in an Australian, which Canada's not going to like, but they're in an alliance with you. What are they going to do, huh? And you get more stability. Yeah, you get more stability. Or you can invite a member of the royal family to hold the post, as I said before. So let's first take a look at who you're going to get. You're going to get Isaac Isaacs. Good job, parents, on that name. So he's gonna take control, and this is going to open up your democratic Australasia path. So let's just let the clock run for a little bit, and we'll take the obvious one, the freedom of the press. This is going to increase the popularity of the market liberals, which you yourself are. You have a few other focuses here. Question of the unions, which is going to give you the event workers' organizations and trade unions. Honestly, that's not a very important thing, so I'm not even going to talk about it. Lifting martial law is also going to help things because Australia has basically been under martial law. The syndicalists are now marching. They're getting pissed about having lost the election. And then after you take question of the unions, you can either choose to suppress the syndicalists, which is going to increase the popularity of the national populace, but lower the popularity of your own party and the syndicalists, although you get a little bit more stability. Or you could choose to compromise with labor, which is going to increase the popularity of yourself and the syndicalists, and you get some political power. So it's basically, do you want political power or stability? And would you rather, what's going on here? Illegal strikes. Yeah, there's tons of these events. There's just so many. I'm not going to go into them all. So it's just, again, picking and choosing. If you were to take these two then, labor threat would still be cut off to you, as well as the calls for unity and the Maori Act. Because these three cannot be done until the 1939 election has been complete, because one of the things that makes Australasia kind of unique is that there's a lot of countries where you lock yourself in 1936. Sometimes, basically, you've decided what kind of government you're going to have, but you can continue to play for a few years before you actually get your final choice. All right, so let's now go back once more to the 1936 elections, because I want to show you some other paths that you can take. This time I'm going to show you how you can get the totalists into power. Obviously, the social conservatives will be brought into power if you elect them instead. But let's talk about John Curtin and the Australasia Labour Party. Well, once this happens, again, Social Democrats are there, but Australasia's in charge. There's the Guard complaining again. All right, then you are going to get this pop-up. Very important. The ACTU makes its move. The Australasian Labour Party National Executive met today in Canada. Yeah, whatever. The point is, the syndicalists, the ACTU, could attempt to seize control of the government. That's the Australasian Council of Trade Unions, by the way. If they do, you're going to lose stability, and you're going to get something called new unrest, which is really rough, and you automatically leave the Entente. So here's John Curtin. New unrest. This can happen now. This can happen in 1939. It lowers your stability by 20% and increases your daily political power costs by 50%. So, what that means, let's say you're, okay, we're going to bypass that. Let's say that you are taking a focus. You are now getting negative political power every day. Of course, this also depends on if you're still under the economic depression and things like that. But low popularity and disaster is very much in your future. In fact, we should be at disaster right now because we have less than zero stability. Then you are going to get a choice. Who is going to be your temporary chairman? You can choose Frederick Patterson, who is your syndicalist, or you can choose J.B. Miles, who would be your totalist. Who's actually, oh, sorry, pardon me, I was getting mixed up with something later. There's a lot to cover here. He's down here. He's the local tyrant. He's giving you more resources but less political power, which again is not helping things because now you're down to 0.64 political power a day. So, eventually, you are going to be able to have a conference. Actually, I'll just do it now. So, the way this works is you would start going down your tree, and eventually the syndicalists will restore order, which will get rid of your new unrest, national spirit, and then afterwards you'll actually get some event pop-ups. And this is going to happen whether you are restoring order, or the AFM is restoring order, or the Australasian Guard is restoring order. Now, just to review, these are the centrist branches, syndicalism branches, paternal autocrats, and national populists. So, depending on who restores order, the point is you'll still lose that national spirit, and then you're going to get a series of events that are giving you things like more stability. So, once you've taken this, I think you'd actually be pretty surprised how fast you recover. Now, once you have restored order, you are going to get the first conference of the ACTU. You have to have restored order first. You then are going to get the option for either the syndicalists to remain in control, or the totalists to remain in control, or the Maximists, as they call themselves. You know, it's all about that Mosley Doctrine, right? So, you're going to get another 10% in popularity. Take note, though, that if you take the total list, you are going to lose another 100 political power. So there you go. There's John Miles, and we have yet another character with a pipe in this game. So that's how you could become totalist. Eventually, afterwards, you are going to get an event asking for who your vice chairman is going to be. So right here we have the Maximus vice chairman, and oh goodness gracious, where's my notes on this? Oh yeah, so the Maximus vice chairman, they're going to choose between Lance Sharkey and if you're interested in Australian history, I gotta say, whoever put this tree together, they did an excellent job. So you have like Lance Sharkey here, who was in our original timeline a trade unionist, journalist. He was a very Soviet-style communist, and was the Secretary General of the Communist Party of Australia for almost 20 years. And then you got Herbert Moxon, for example. So the choices for the Maximus are Herbert or Lance. If you go with the Syndicalists, your choices are going to be between Fred Patterson, right here, who's going to give you more political power, and John Anderson, who's also going to give you more political power. Not as much, but you get more research gain efficiency. So the thing is, you do not have to commit yourself to whoever this is, because like a lot of the other syndicalist branch of the government's countries in the game, such as the commune and things like that, you're gonna have other elections later. So democratic elections, keep track here, are every 3 years. Syndicalist elections are every 5 years. So when the second Congress eventually happens, you can switch parties, for example. So right now we are Totalists, and you can switch over to Syndicalists. So there's Fred Patterson again. Then eventually there is a third election, and I think this is, as far as I can tell from reading the files, this is like when New England breaks off from the United States. You just have your 3 elections, and then that's it. Which is fine. That's a pretty long game if you're 15 years in already. Whoops. So you're going to have your third Congress eventually. Oh, what the heck is going on? There it is. Okay, and you can actually have radical socialists take control, but this can only happen under John Garden. This can only happen at the second Congress. The first Congress, your only options are between the Syndicalists and the Totalists. Keep in mind the low popularity. Okay, so we already, so what have we gone over so far? I've showed you how to become social conservative, market liberal, syndicalist, totalist, and radical socialist, and social democratic. Let's now talk about how you become authoritarian Democrats. And this has to do actually with something that is called the Second Melbourne Uprising. So I'm gonna jump to this event, and I'm gonna go into more detail about it later. But basically, the Second Melbourne Uprising is an event that could happen it's usually in 1939, and it'll happen after the Centre Party, or sometimes the Centre Party. It's if the Centre Party is in control. Basically, and yes, this is Prince George, by the way. Yeah, there's so much to cover. Anyway, so there'll be a Melbourne Uprising. You have 3 different options to choose from here. You can crush the uprising. There will be no mercy, which is going to cost you an enormous 500 political power, as well as 10% base stability. But you get to keep your party, and that's it. There's no actual uprising in the sense that there's going to be a break-off here in Victoria of the Australasian Union, and they're going to have spawn divisions, and then they're going to join the Third International, and it turns into this big mess or something. Nothing like that is going to happen. It's much more like the internal conflicts that you'll see happen in Japan with the syndicalists, or say in Iran, whenever you have the civil war that's actually just a series of events. It's not an actual civil war of 2 halves of a nation. So you could do that, or you could have the uprising succeed, as you can see here, and if you do that, you can become the Australasian Union. So you become that union in 1939 if you so choose. Okay, we need to go back to that now. Yeah, we're going back to the Second Melbourne Uprising. Your third option, though, is you can ask the British for help. You see, when you go national populist, you're still a member of the Entente. In fact, you're almost militantly a member of the Entente when you read through some of these events. So if you turn to the British for help, the Canadians are going to get an event called the Second Melbourne Uprising, and they can choose to help you or not. So, the emergency protocols have now been evoked. This is something that goes back into the lore, but this happened also in the 1920s. Now, let's keep an eye on this here. Right now, we have His Royal Highness Prince George in control as the head of the Centre Party. Prince George, incidentally, is not the George that would become known as George VI. That George is... This is a little confusing, but to some people, but the person who was George VI in our timeline, his real name was Albert, and that's what he went by. Because his full name was Albert Frederick Arthur George. So he took the name George when he ascended. So this George was his younger brother, who was actually George. Right? Does that all make sense? I hope it all makes sense. Prince George, the Duke of Kent, to be exact. So anyway, emergency protocols have now been invoked, and this is what happens with the Governor General thing when the British take over. By the way, I don't remember if I mentioned that, but you're going to get rid of your new unrest. You're going to lose stability, but then the National Party becomes the ruling party, which is only 4% popular. But that's a way that you can have an authoritarian Democrat, Prince George, in charge of the Australasian Confederation. However, I have received reports. In my personal testing, this has never happened, but I've been hearing it from more than one person. Sometimes you will become social conservative after taking that path. I personally have not encountered that, even if I elect the social conservatives during the 2 prior elections. But there's people saying it's possible. Take it with a grain of salt. I haven't personally witnessed it. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up. So Prince George is in charge here. So here's a little, I shouldn't say it's fun, somebody's gonna die, but here's an interesting little Easter egg with him. Prince George died in 1942. I think it was 1942 in an accident, in an airplane accident. So if you get past 1942 with him in charge, you'll get this event eventually. Prince George killed in a recent crash by a small plane on its way to New Zealand, claimed several lives, among them the Governor General of the Australasian Confederation, Prince George. The country is in mourning, angered by the loss of the young prince, and a royal commission is currently looking into the cause of the disaster, even though, truth be told, little wreckage has been found in the Pacific waters. After weeks of search, in the meantime, the prince's elder brother, Prince Henry, the Duke of Gloucester, has arrived in the Australasian Confederation as his replacement. Sadly, Prince Henry's first act as Governor General will be to attend the funeral for his brother. Sad loss indeed. So then you're going to get Prince Henry, a pretty interesting dude, military guy, wanted to be in command of the 10th Royal Hussars. He had an affair with a film director's wife. He actually attended the coronation of Haile Selassie over here. And he was one of the last 2 knights of St. Patrick ever made, the other one being his brother, the one who became the King George VI in our original timeline. And there's a lot of other interesting stuff, including that he's apparently a Targaryen, judging by his purple eyes. So that's cool. Now, there are sometimes, you know how you can get that, you know how earlier I was saying it's if you bring in a royal family member as the Governor General after you elect after you democratically elect somebody, and you can democratically elect the National Populists, by the way, in the 1939 election, because they've been getting more popular in the interim. Sometimes, or at least once, because in my testing it happened only one time, Prince Henry will be sent immediately instead of Prince George. I'm not sure. I was looking through the files. I don't know why he would sometimes be sent, but it is possible you can get him very early. Okay, let's see. What else is there to cover? I still need to show you guys how to get the paternal autocrats. Let's also, though, look at some other different leaders that you can get here. Let's see, go through my notes here. I think I dropped a page somewhere. Okay, so this is where you've got John Curtin in charge. Of course, the other guy hasn't been elected yet. So let's do the remember it's event. Of course, don't be using console commands in an actual game. This is for demonstrative purposes only. Come on, seriously. Okay, I clearly did something wrong. There we go. Okay, final Congress of the ACTU. Let's say you have the Maximus take control. Now, eventually, he will also die. So this is event, is it 308? I think it's 308. No, that's Fred Patterson. Okay, wait a minute. Sorry. It's 306 for him. So J.P. Mills will resign because he's in poor health. This will usually happen in 1946 or later, and then he will either, he will be replaced with Lance Sharkey. I gotta say that's I've never seen a picture of Lance Sharkey that actually looked that nice. It's good coloring. I've just never seen. I don't know what the base of this picture is, but again, if we were to go back, here, when the Syndicalists win. There's another couple of interesting characters. Come on. All right, so we're gonna do. Okay, we're getting the new Syndicalist leaders out here. Event Australasia 101. We're gonna have the Syndicalists stay in control. So now down here, you've now got your ministers. Donald Cameron, Patrick Troy, L.C. Forelli, and Fred W. Patterson. So, eventually, Patterson will die if you have him still in charge. And, not Patterson. Anyway, Australia 306. Now I'm getting them mixed up again. 308. What? There it is. So you've got two options here. You can either go with John Anderson as your appropriate choice, or you can go with L.C. Forelli. So if you don't know who this is, that's because she's usually known as Elsie Locke, because she wrote children's books, and she would have been quite young. I think she would have been like in her 30s here, and you can have her become your head of the government. And the reason I bring this one up is because she's actually from New Zealand, so that's how you get a New Zealander in charge. That's why I brought her up specifically. All right, who's still left? The paternal autocrats. So let's first load up the game here. And you can, let's see, where's the 1939 save elections? Here you go. So in March of 1939, if you've been staying Democratic, you are going to get another election. During this time, the more extreme parties will have been getting more popular, specifically the Labor parties, the Syndicalists, the Totalists, as well as the Center Party, and also a little bit the Australasia First movement, aka the AFM, right here. So right now, as you can see in 1939, my Market Liberal Party has only got 3% popularity. It gets really rough sometimes. You then could choose who you're going to have in charge. So, for example, we could re-elect the Market Liberals. We could switch over to the the Labor Party here, because basically the UAP will want to form a coalition with you. You could go with the Centre Party, National Populists, or the Australia First movement. So, I swear I'm going to show the Centre and the AFM, but I want to show you one of the other ways that the National Party can take control. So right here, we've had the Labour Party take over. And again, you're going to have they can make their move. We will declare the Syndicalist Republic here. And John Curtin will take control. Of course, you will lose anything else that you had before that contradicts something you have there. So look, like right now we're leaving the ISAC. Oh yeah, right. We're working on the end of the Depression. So a little bit after you take control, you are going to have an event. You're going to start getting events where the Center Party, which wants to stay with the Entente, is getting very upset. You're going to start arresting them. Some of them are going to start fleeing. By the way, this is an example of a trade mission, so we can send a trade mission over here to the commune. Let's see how that goes. This is one of those non-Entente country things. My other notes. Notes. I need more notes. I've got so many notes. Actually, wait, I think I have a save file for this, but eventually there will be an attempted coup. by the national populace. So there are two ways that this can go down, initially I mean. You can either have this happen in 1936 after the syndicalists take control, or this could happen in 1939. It takes about 6 months or so. This is it. The Australasian Guard coup government forces scrambled today as the capital found itself under sudden siege. Australian Guard paramilitary troops took numerous officials hostage, led by Field Marshal Thomas Blaney and Major General Herbert Lloyd. So you're going to lose them as your generals or field marshals if you have them. As they attempted to take unlawful command of Parliament, their radio broadcast is blaring through Canberra, not only calling on Australasians to rise up against syndicalism, but claiming to have full support of the Entente. This is outrageous interference in Australasian affairs, if true, but so far it remains to be seen if forces loyal to the ACTU will even win the day. So you can have the coup succeed, and the Guard takes control of the country. This will cost you 200 political power and 10 base stability. And we'll take a look at that later. But you can also, in fact, let me do this so I can find it faster. Okay, so, or the coup can fail, and they'll flee the government, which is also going to cost you political power and stability, but not as much. And now Canada is going to hate you more. So what's eventually going to happen is that they're all going to start fleeing to New Zealand. So you see loss of control in New Zealand. It seems that Blamey's attempted coup was not the end of it. The Australasian Guard has found supporters in the New Zealand government, which strenuously objects to our syndicalist ideals and separation from the Entente. And over the last days, our control over the island state has deteriorated. Australasian forces are scrambling to prepare for war, even as several of our generals and a proportion of our fleet have switched allegiances. We are, it seems, headed for civil war. This is going to cost you another 100 political power. And so, as you can see, New Zealand is broken off, but they just have a generic focus tree. So Bernard Freyberg is nominally in charge right now. And though I think this is interesting, the Australasian Guard is still technically over here. So it's where I guess that just means there's people on the mainland that are there. So eventually you are gonna get cause to go to war with New Zealand. Like a war is gonna break out. So when that war breaks out, you're gonna want to be ready, and you're gonna want to invade New Zealand very fast, because you won't be at war with only New Zealand. You are going to be at war with the entire Entente. So that means the Dominion of India, Canada especially, they're going to be coming for you, especially if it's the early part of the game when they're not really doing anything else. So they can try to go after you. So you see here it's December of 1936, and I've already landed in New Zealand. It's usually pretty easy. They are going to get an Air Force, a Navy, and division, but they're all pretty small, although yours is also going to be pretty small. But the key is you just want to occupy New Zealand, and especially Auckland. The Canadians love to land at Auckland, and they will put a dozen divisions there, and you'll never be able to dislodge them. So definitely try to get that, and then you could deal with the New Zealand. Like, get any naval base you can, and then you should be able to deal with the New Zealanders relatively quickly. So eventually, once you capitulate New Zealand, you then have to wait. You have to get ready for any potential naval invasions that the Entente is also going to do. So, for example, here you see New Zealand capitulates. So, you can capitulate them pretty quick. I did it in like a month. A little bit over a month. Was no problem. Really, actually ran into a little problem, so it's not a big deal. But once you capitulate New Zealand, as you see I have done here, but I am still at war with the entire Entente, you then have to just wait. So what I would just recommend is, get your fallback lines on every victory point and naval base that you possibly can. Let's see here, and eventually you will get this event. So note, it was January of 1937 when I capitulated New Zealand. Now it is, come on, it is October of 1938, so it's been almost 2 years, and I finally get this event, a call for peace. It has been many months since the war with New Zealand began, and while we have captured the islands, we remain at war with their colonial masters. This is a war that will go nowhere, however, and thus the suggestion has been raised that we should seek white peace with the British. If they leave us be, this conflict will be put behind us. So this is not like when you're fighting as the Commune or as the Princely Federation over here in India, and then once you push everybody out of the subcontinent, everybody in the Entente, I mean, you have to wait like a week and then you get the pop-up calling for peace. No, you can call for the truce, or you can tell them they're dreaming, but you're going to want to call for the truce. And while they technically can reject it, I have not seen the AI ever do it. I suppose that option is only there for multiplayer games or something, so We're just going to wait a little bit to get the feedback. Okay, cool. There it is. There's the white piece. You also get some political power as a result of that. And you're going to seize it. So, now, another thing to take note of. Because New Zealand did break away, if you were to look at one of your states down here, you see this is a core state, and then you look over here in New Zealand, you'll see it's a colony state now, so you've lost your cores here, and that's not the only way you could do it. You will eventually get them back, and when you get those cores, you'll also get some stability as well, but it takes a few months sometimes. All right, finally, let's start talking about the national populists and the paternal autocrats. We've been making our way left to right ideologically. So we need to find the... Wait, where is it? Right here. That's why I saved it. Now, once you become national populist, again, it's going to get rid of any national spirits or effects or anything that would have contradicted something that could have happened earlier. So right here, the Australasian Guard coup. It's 1936. The coup could succeed and the Guard will take control of the country. So now, note you are the Australasian Confederation again. You have Thomas Blaney in charge once more. And you should have him available again as a field marshal. Or wait, no, does he stay in the office? Anyway, but the point is, you're going to get him back, and even though as you can see in this example, I've already taken 2 focuses, you're going to get demonstrations. The syndicalists are mad, don't worry about it. Not for right now, anyway, but now you have the victory for the Guard, the reaffirmation of the Entente Alliance happens automatically, and then you can start going down here to recreate the order. So if the National Populists, though, were to win in the 1939 elections... Let's go back once more. That is when you have the Second Melbourne Uprisings. Come on, come on. So the second, this is the circumstances under which the Second Melbourne Uprising is supposed to happen. It's also, I think, technically supposed to happen in the 1936 election. If you get, I mean, if the coup happens afterwards, then you get a counter. So you get like a coup. The syndicalists, I mean, the Labour Party gets elected. This is how it's supposed to go, it's my understanding. The Labour Party gets elected. The syndicalists coup the government. The National Populists then coup them. The syndicalists then attempt to coup them again with the Second Melbourne Uprising. But I could be wrong about that. They've maybe decided to not do it that way after all, because there seems to be no Second Melbourne Uprising that happens in 1936. But, or 37 I should say. But be prepared for it to happen anyway, because you never know. So we talked earlier about turning for the British to help and how you can also just become the syndicalists again. You can also crush the uprising with no mercy, which of course is going to cost you 500 political power, but you actually get to stay how you are, at least. So you can eventually recover from that. And like I said, the stability is very bad right now, but once you get down to restoring order, I think you'd be very surprised how quickly you could take charge. Incidentally, I know that I'm not going over the bottom parts of these trees. I'm going to do that after I've talked about how to become all 3 of these people. All right, one more to show. The AFM. Let's see, 1939 election, March 7th. Now, as I said before, you're going to have 4 options to choose. The Labour Party, the Moderate Party, the Centre Party, and, of course, the Australasia First Movement. The Australasians will create the Republic of Australasia, as you can see here. You have victory for the AFM, and you can then cut ties with the Crown. So let's start taking a look at what we can do here. Actually, no, we have to wait for the end of the Depression. So while we're waiting here, as you can see, you're going to have another election in 1942, so that's going to help you increase your popularity more if you'd like. And you also have the new unrest, which you're going to be able to get rid of here in the AMF Restores Order. You can cut ties with the ground, which is going to take you out of the Entente, which is going to make a lot of people angry with you, the Entente people, and a lot of people not angry with you, the people who are not in the Entente. These are just going to boost your popularity a little bit here, although seizing total control is going to actually reduce it. This gets rid of elections. I guess in theory you could wait till 1942 if you wanted to increase your popularity that way, but it might not be the best idea. But the AFM is extremely defensively minded. After you restore order, you can start doing social reforms and things like that. Monarchist officers, you're going to purge them, because let's keep in mind that you're still going to have the Centre Party out there that is very upset. So Thomas Blaney in this example is my field marshal. You're going to have to purge him as you go down the tree. And then there's just some industrial stuff here. Fortress Australasia is going to, of course, give you more defense. So you've got Fortress Australasia over here, which is giving you more defense and encryption and things like that. And then you're going to combine that over here with the focus on defense. Note how you cannot take the Anderson Doctrine. All right, End of the Depression is done. So you cut ties with the crowd. Out of the Entente now. You do have access to social reforms. This is possible whether you go syndicalist or AFM, and then you can go down here and end white Australasia, which is going to modify your social reforms more and actually make you less popular once again, but you're going to get more monthly population and daily political power gain and a little bit more production efficiency cap. You could also do ties with Japan, which is kind of interesting, so you can align yourself with them, or you can stay on your own. The future is ours, united we stand, and we march forward, all give you 200 political power. Keep in mind that Kaiserreich has a political power cap of 400, so before you take these focuses, make sure that you spend what you got so that you don't waste your gains. Whereas the syndicalists, they only get the joining of the Internationale here. Pardon me, they still get the 200 political power, but they also get to join the Third International. Keep in mind, though, they might say no. It is possible that you cannot be allowed to join. And the event will even say that's really confusing. I guess they don't consider us syndicalist enough, but it is actually possible. Over here in the Victory for the Guard, you can reaffirm the alliance automatically, of course, and then you're going to go down here and you're going to get a lot of army reforms, but also things that reduce the consumer good factories, give you more war support, stability, and things like that. The Arising Power and To Serve the Empire, you can take either of these. A rising power will not break you off. Okay, you still stay in it, you're just going to get the ability to send more volunteers, and you get more daily political power. Actually, a lot more. So essentially, you just need to decide, do I want a bunch of political power at once, or do I want to have an additional half point of daily political power every single day? Over here, of course, we had the Totalist Congress and the Syndicalist Congress that we already talked about, but then more industry stuff, less consumer good factories, things like that. Go through them all on your own time. Mobilizing the Revolution is kind of interesting because it's going to automatically give you Military Police 1. So you really get a lot of support stuff when you think about it. Mobilizing the Revolution is going to give you more military police. And then you get the support ones over here. So this is going to give you logistic companies. This is going to give you mountain infantry and things like that. And finally over here, you've got the Democratic Australasia. You have the Maori Act and things like that. These are just all stabilizing things, making you more popular. You can then choose to become a republic while staying with the Entente, or you can say, long live the king, and you're going to just basically be subservient to them for a long time. So something I wanted to show you, though, in regards to that. When you decide to become a republic, the Canadian government is actually going to get an event where it says Australia wants to become a republic. Is that okay? And they could say no. If they say no, you as the Republic of Australia can choose to say, okay, well then I'm just going to be a republic on my own anyway. And you can say good riddance to colonial rubbish, or you can actually get an annex war goal on them. As Canada. So if you're going to be defiant, you want to be careful about that, because you might end up with Canada declaring war on you. Not that it happened here. Okay, and then I think there was just one more thing I wanted to show you guys, the New Zealand vote. So it is possible that if you have enacted conscription laws, because New Zealand in particular gets quite upset about that because they consider themselves to be their own country. They don't consider Australasia to be a country. There's Australia and there's New Zealand. They can vote to actually leave, and if they do, you're obviously going to no longer have them as a core, and you're going to lose political power, and they're going to stay in the Entente. You stay in the Entente as well. It just depends on various things that have happened. So this is possible. If it does happen, as you see, you then just become known as Australia. You get the classic flag. All right, I think that is quite a long enough video. Oh yeah, and you lost generals. Thanks for joining me. I'm Conquering History Games, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little bonus guide. Subscribe if you haven't already. Remember that Patrons usually get to vote on my guides. This was just an extra one that I did, but the weekly Kaiserreich guides are chosen by my Patrons. And I hope this was helpful for you, because it was a freaking hour and took a lot more than that in research. Have a great day.